If you want to know how fast family ties shatter, just wait until someone destroys a $50,000 project drive and smiles about it. I have always been the reliable one in my family. The steady foundation in the background. The daughter who pays her own rent, builds her own career from scratch, shows up on time, and never asks for a single favor or a dime. My younger sister, Fallon, is the exact opposite. At 27 years old, she still lives in our parents' spacious guest room. She spends her days drifting from one delusional dream to the next, scrolling through social media, and somehow always having a new designer bag hanging off her arm. She is what therapists call the golden child. I am the invisible one, the scapegoat. Usually, I just keep my distance, living my life quietly in my own apartment across town. But last weekend, at our mandatory family summer barbecue, distance was not an option. The afternoon sun was beating down relentlessly on my parents' backyard. The smell of charred burgers, expensive sunscreen, and cheap beer hung thick in the humid air. I was sitting at the far edge of the stone patio, trying to isolate myself from the loud chatter of my relatives. I had my heavy-duty work laptop open on a small wrought iron table, reviewing some critical code. I work as an enterprise software implementation consultant. My job requires handling sensitive, military-grade encrypted data on physical external drives. The small, heavy black drive plugged into my machine held months of intricate architectural frameworks for a massive corporate client. It was not just a piece of metal. It was worth $50,000 upon delivery next week. It was my reputation. It was my livelihood. That was when Fallon decided to corner me. She waited until our aunts and uncles were distracted by a game of horseshoes on the lawn. She practically glided over to my table. She smelled intensely of an expensive floral perfume that I knew she did not buy with her own money. She leaned against the granite outdoor kitchen counter right next to my setup, effectively blocking my view of the deep blue swimming pool. "Sloan," she started, her voice dripping with that fake, sugary sweetness she always uses when she is about to ask for something unreasonable. "I need $45,000 for my new startup idea. It is going to be the next big thing in the tech space. You are doing so well right now. You can afford to invest in your own sister. It will be a loan, I swear." I stopped typing. I did not look at the screen anymore. I looked up at her. She was wearing a pristine white designer sundress, holding a fresh mimosa in a crystal glass, looking like she did not have a single real responsibility or care in the entire world. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped rhythmically against her glass. I told her no. I kept my voice flat, calm, and firm. I did not raise my tone. I just looked her in the eyes and said I am not a bank, and I am not funding another one of her imaginary companies that will inevitably fail in 3 months. I told her I worked too hard for my money to throw it away. Fallon's sweet expression melted instantly. The mask slipped. Her jaw tightened, and her eyes narrowed into a glare of pure, unfiltered resentment. She hates the word no. She has rarely heard it in her life, especially not under this roof. She reached over, pretending to casually examine my work setup. "Oh, you are always so obsessed with your little computer things," she muttered. Before my brain could even process her sudden movement, her hand shot out and grabbed the heavy, military-grade encryption drive right out of the port. "Oops," she whispered. She did not just drop it. She intentionally slammed her hand down, smashing the heavy drive violently against the sharp, hard edge of the granite countertop. I heard a sickening, sharp crack as the reinforced casing splintered. Then, with a casual flick of her wrist, she sent the shattered piece of hardware tumbling through the air. It hit the surface of the deep end of the swimming pool with a hollow splash. "Sorry, I accidentally smashed your little project," she smirked, tilting her head with a look of pure, triumphant malice. Have you ever felt a rage so cold it actually freezes your vocal cords? Have you ever been so furious that your vision tunnels and the world goes completely silent? Let me know in the comments below, because that is exactly what happened to me in that split second. I sat there, paralyzed in my chair, watching the bubbles rise to the surface of the pool. Down at the bottom, resting on the blue tiles, was months of my life's work. My client data. My complex code. My unblemished professional reputation. all sinking in chlorinated water. What is going on over here? My mother, Beatrice, walked over holding a massive platter of hot dog buns. Her tone was already laced with annoyance before she even knew what was happening. Mom, I think I tripped and knocked Sloane's little computer thing into the water. Fallon immediately pouted, her voice shifting into a whiny, victimized pitch. I feel so bad. It was an accident. My mother did not even look at the pool. She did not ask what was broken. She looked directly at me and let out a heavy, exasperated sigh. Sloane, do not make a scene. It was just a slip. She is very stressed about her new business venture. You need to be more understanding and stop acting so tense all the time. I did not scream. I did not flip the heavy iron table. I did not throw my drink in my sister's face. I just sat there and stared at my mother's dismissive face and then at my sister's smug, satisfied grin. I knew right then and there that the polite, accommodating version of me was dead. If they wanted to see what happens when you push a rational person over the edge, they were about to get a front row seat. Silence is a funny thing. In a family that thrives on loud arguments and dramatic outbursts, giving them silence is the most unsettling weapon you can use. As I stood up slowly from my chair, the chaotic noise of the summer barbecue seemed to fade into a dull, distant hum. The roaring laughter from my uncles, the splashing of my younger cousins in the shallow end, the loud sizzle of the grill, all of it felt a million miles away. My focus was entirely locked on the bottom of the pool. I walked over to the concrete edge. The water was crystal clear, making it incredibly easy to see the crushed, waterlogged pieces of my $50,000 project sitting there like a sunken ship. As I stared at the faint blinking light of the drive dying under the water, a massive flood of memories hit me like a physical blow to the chest. This was not an isolated incident. This was not a sudden burst of sibling rivalry. This was just the latest, most expensive exhibit in a very long, very painful museum of my family's toxic history. My mind violently dragged me back to when I was 18 years old. I had worked double shifts at a greasy local diner for 2 straight years, coming home smelling like stale fries and bleach every single night. I did it to save up enough money for my first semester of college tuition. I kept all that cash in a joint savings account my mother had set up for me when I was a minor. 1 week before my tuition was due, I went to the bank to get a cashier's check. The teller looked at me with pity and told me the account was empty. All of it. Gone. When I rushed home and confronted my mother, she refused to even make eye contact with me. She casually flipped through a magazine and told me that Fallon was going through a really tough time emotionally in high school and needed a summer trip to Europe to find her inspiration. She had taken my hard-earned college money to pay for my sister's luxury vacation. I had to scramble and take out predatory student loans just to keep my enrollment. Then came the year I turned 24. I had finally managed to buy my first decent car, a reliable, safe little sedan that I paid for entirely by myself. Fallon begged to borrow it to go to a party, promising with tears in her eyes that she would be back in an hour. She brought it back the next morning on the back of a tow truck. The front end was totally smashed in. She had been texting while driving and hit a parked truck. My father, Vernon, stepped in before I could even assess the mechanical damage. He patted my shoulder, handed me a beer, and told me I needed to pay for the repairs myself. He said she is just young and makes mistakes, and that I should not ruin her credit history by getting insurance involved. I ate cheap instant noodles for 6 months to pay off that massive repair bill. And just 3 years ago, when I was 28, I was nominated for a prestigious industry award. It was the first time I felt truly recognized and respected in my highly competitive field. I saved up and bought a stunning, custom-tailored designer dress for the gala. It was the most expensive piece of clothing I had ever owned in my life. 2 days before the event, I found the dress shoved in the dark back corner of my closet. The delicate zipper was violently ripped out, and there was a massive, sticky red wine stain across the front silk panel. Fallon had sneaked into my apartment, borrowed it for a wild club night, ruined it, and hid it like a coward. When I confronted her, she immediately started crying to my parents. My mother scolded me, saying I was being materialistic and cruel to my sister over a simple piece of fabric. I attended the most important awards ceremony of my life, wearing a cheap blazer I bought from a thrift store on the drive there. All these memories rushed over me in a matter of seconds, standing by the pool. For years, I had convinced myself that if I just worked harder, if I just stayed out of the way and became successful, they would eventually respect my boundaries. I thought my financial independence would build a thick wall between their toxicity and my peace. But looking at the destroyed drive, I realized a fundamental truth. They did not just tolerate Fallon's terrible behavior. They enabled it. They fed her sick sense of entitlement until it grew into a monster that felt perfectly justified in destroying $50,000 of my hard work just because I dared to say the word no. I took off my leather shoes, rolled up my denim jeans, and stepped onto the top step of the pool. The water felt icy against my skin. I waded in, holding my breath as the water quickly reached my waist. I reached down to the bottom and retrieved the heavy metal casing. It was dripping wet, the tiny indicator light dark and dead. The crack in the side was deep and jagged, exposing the delicate, complex memory chips inside to the harsh chlorine. I climbed out of the pool. My clothes were soaked, clinging to my legs. I wrapped the ruined drive carefully in a dry towel I grabbed from a nearby lounge chair. Fallon was still standing by the patio counter, watching my every move. She looked slightly disappointed. She was waiting for the shouting match. She was waiting for me to call her names so she could squeeze out a few fake tears and have my mother rush over to comfort her. "Sloane, do not make a scene," my mother's voice echoed in my head again. I looked at my mother. Then I looked at Fallon. "I am not making a scene, Mom," I said softly. My voice was incredibly steady, dangerously calm. "I am just going home." I turned my back on them, walked straight through the side gate without looking back, and got into my car. The entire drive home, my hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned stark white. But I did not cry. Crying was for victims. And I was done being a victim. The drive to my apartment felt like it took agonizing hours, even though it was only a 20-minute trip across the city. The silence inside my car was heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sound of my wet jeans squeaking against the leather driver's seat every time I shifted my weight. I kept glancing at the passenger seat where the towel-wrapped drive rested like a deceased patient. $50,000. That number kept flashing in my brain like a bright neon warning sign. When I finally unlocked my front door, the familiar quiet of my apartment washed over me. There was no screaming here. No gaslighting. No one telling me I was overreacting. Just my own safe, organized space. I walked straight into the kitchen, unwrapped the drive, and set it down carefully under the bright overhead lights of my island counter. It was worse than I originally thought. The sharp granite edge had completely crushed the primary data port, bending the metal inward, and the pool water had seeped deeply into the internal housing. I am a seasoned tech professional. I know exactly when a piece of hardware can be salvaged with rice and desperate prayers, and I know when something is a catastrophic total loss. This was a total loss. The military-grade encryption protocol meant the data could not simply be pulled from a remote cloud backup. It required the physical decryption key stored on this very destroyed piece of hardware. My chest tightened and my breathing grew shallow. The final client presentation was in exactly 9 days. I would have to work 18-hour shifts, fueled by nothing but panic and caffeine, to rebuild the complex architecture from my local, fragmented secondary backups. The stress was going to be unimaginable. My career was hanging by a very thin thread. My phone buzzed loudly against the marble counter. It was a rapid series of text messages in the family group chat. I picked it up and stared at the bright screen. "Mom, Sloane, that was very rude of you to just leave without saying goodbye to your aunts and uncles. Fallon feels terrible about slipping by the pool. You owe her an apology for storming off and ruining the mood for everyone." Aunt Margot, exactly. Family gatherings are about love and forgiveness. You always have to make everything so tense, Sloane. It is just a computer part. I stared at the screen. The sheer audacity of these messages actually made me laugh out loud. A harsh, dry sound that echoed weirdly in the empty kitchen. My sister intentionally destroys my livelihood, jeopardizes my biggest client contract, and I am the one who owes an apology for ruining the mood of a backyard barbecue. I did not type a reply. I did not try to defend myself. I turned my phone on silent, flipped it face down, and tossed it onto the living room sofa. They wanted a screaming match. They wanted me to act crazy so they could justify treating me like the villain. I decided to give them a silent, calculated execution instead. I walked into my home office and booted up my secondary laptop. The blue glow of the monitor cast long, sharp shadows across the room. I sat down in my ergonomic chair, cracked my knuckles, and opened my secure web browser. For the past 5 years, because I was the only one in the family making a decent, stable income, I had slowly and quietly become the invisible benefactor of Fallon's very comfortable lifestyle. She did not have a real job, but she lived like a minor social media influencer. And I knew exactly how she managed it. It was a vast network of shared accounts, forgotten passwords, and quiet digital leeches attached directly to my bank accounts. I had let it slide for years because fighting over a $15 streaming subscription always turned into a massive family drama where I was painted as the greedy, unsupportive older sister. But tonight, the rules of engagement had changed. You do not get to smash my house and then ask for the Wi-Fi password. I started with the easy targets. Entertainment. Netflix. Hulu. Spotify. Amazon Prime. I went into the security settings of each platform, changed the passwords to highly complex strings of characters, logged out of all active devices globally, and enabled strict two-factor authentication tied only to my phone number. I watched the little green check marks appear on the screen, confirming the changes. It felt incredibly satisfying, like pulling ugly weeds out of a garden I had neglected for too long. Next was the ride-sharing and food delivery. A few years ago, Fallon claimed her debit card was stolen while she was downtown and frantically asked to use my Uber account to get a safe ride home. I linked my credit card to her app. I never unlinked it. I opened my ride-sharing dashboard and permanently revoked her access. Then I did the exact same thing for DoorDash and Uber Eats. But as I was meticulously going through my Amazon purchase history to ensure she had not ordered any expensive items recently, I noticed something strange. A recurring charge I did not recognize. $39.99. Every single month. I frowned, bringing my face closer to the screen, clicking on the specific transaction details. It was billed under a vague, generic name, Cloud Storage Pro Tier. I do not use that service. My company provides secure enterprise servers for all my data storage needs. I dug much deeper, logging into my main banking portal and pulling up my detailed statements for the last 3 years. My eyes scanned the endless rows of numbers, and my blood turned to ice. It was not just one single recurring charge. Mixed in with my groceries, utilities, and gas were dozens of microtransactions. Software subscriptions for expensive graphic design tools. Premium design accounts. Web hosting fees for domains I had never heard of in my life. I pulled out my desk calculator and started adding the numbers up. Month by month. Year by year. The total kept climbing higher and higher. $300 here. $50 there. It was methodical. It was brilliantly calculated to stay just under the radar of my casual monthly budget reviews. When I hit the equal button, the final number made my stomach drop into my shoes. $12,450. Over the last 3 years, my sweet, innocent sister Fallon had quietly siphoned over $12,000 from my accounts to secretly fund her lavish lifestyle and fake business ventures. She was not just a spoiled, entitled brat. She was a thief. I leaned back in my chair, staring blindly at the white ceiling. The hot anger from the barbecue evaporated entirely, replaced by a razor-sharp, terrifying clarity. This was no longer about a broken piece of hardware. This was about systematic financial abuse. And I was going to burn her fake empire to the ground. The digital clock on my office wall ticked past midnight. The rest of the city outside my window was quiet and asleep, but I was wide awake, fueled by strong cold brew coffee and pure, unadulterated adrenaline. Finding the $12,000 in stolen funds had flipped a heavy switch deep inside me. I was no longer just the annoyed, long-suffering older sister. I was a forensic accountant on a mission of absolute destruction. I opened a new, highly encrypted digital folder on my desktop and named it the binder. This was going to be the central repository for every single piece of evidence I could gather. I spent the next 2 grueling hours downloading every single bank statement, highlighting every unauthorized charge Fallon had made in bright yellow digital ink. I took high-resolution screenshots of the digital receipts, tracing the IP addresses of the purchases back to the router at my parents' house where she lived. Every piece of data was a nail in her coffin. Then I moved on to the heavy artillery. When I was 19 and still in college, my parents had convinced me to open a joint credit card with them for emergencies. Over the years, as my career grew, I had built the credit limit on that account up to a very comfortable, high number. I had long since stopped using it for my daily expenses, but I never closed it out of sheer convenience. I logged into the credit card banking portal. Sure enough, sitting right there on the dashboard, I saw that Fallon had a secondary card issued in her name, directly tied to my massive credit line. I did not just click the freeze button on the website. I picked up my phone and called the 24-hour fraud and customer service line. "Thank you for calling. My name is David. How can I help you tonight?" The sleepy representative answered. "Hi, David," I said, keeping my voice brisk and professional. "I need to report a card as stolen, and I need to permanently close the entire account." "No, do not issue a replacement card to any address. Just shut the entire credit line down completely, effective immediately." "Are you sure, ma'am?" "You have a very excellent history with us," he asked, sounding slightly confused. "I am positive," I replied. "Close it." With a few loud clacking sounds on his keyboard, the umbilical cord was permanently cut. The credit line Fallon had been heavily relying on to buy her designer bags, expensive lunches, and fund her delusions of grandeur was officially dead. I did the exact same thing for my family cell phone plan. She had been piggybacking on my unlimited data plan for 5 years. I logged into the carrier website and paid the hefty early termination fee entirely out of pocket just to have her specific phone number instantly disconnected from my account. Let her enjoy having 0 data and no service when she wakes up in the morning. By 3 o'clock in the morning, my eyes were burning from staring at the glowing screen, but I had successfully severed every single financial and digital tie between us. I had built a massive, impenetrable firewall around my life. There was no secret backdoor left for her to crawl through. I finally closed my laptop, walked into my bathroom, and splashed freezing cold water on my face. Looking in the mirror, I saw dark, heavy circles under my eyes, but I also saw something else. I saw someone who was finally taking back control of her own life. For the first time in my existence, I was not sitting around waiting for my parents to step in and fix things. I was fixing it myself, and I was doing it with surgical precision. I went to bed, but I did not sleep a wink. I lay there in the dark, watching the shadows from the streetlights dance across the ceiling, waiting for the sun to come up. Because I knew exactly what was going to happen when the golden child woke up and realized her golden goose had finally flown away. At exactly 6:15 in the morning, my phone vibrated aggressively on the wooden nightstand. I rolled over, picked it up, and smiled a genuine smile for the first time in 24 hours. The show had officially begun. The lock screen was completely lit up with a rapid barrage of text messages from Fallon. "Fallon, why is my Uber account locked?" "Fallon, hello? Are you awake? I am trying to order my breakfast delivery and the app says payment declined." "Fallon, Sloan, this is not funny anymore. Did you change the Netflix password too? I am trying to watch a show while I get ready." "Fallon, you are being so petty and childish over a stupid accident at the pool. Fix this right now." I did not reply. I walked slowly into the kitchen, started my coffee maker, and watched the notifications continue to roll in on the screen. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking to witness. Less than 24 hours ago, she had intentionally destroyed $50,000 of my professional work, and she was genuinely throwing a temper tantrum because she could not get her morning iced latte delivered on my dime. By 8 o'clock, the situation escalated dramatically. She realized her shiny credit card was declined at her favorite spot. Fallon, my card is not working. I am at the salon and my card is declined. You canceled the card. Are you out of your mind? How am I supposed to pay for this? I took a slow, satisfying sip of my hot coffee. The silent strategy was working perfectly. She was spiraling out of control, typing faster and faster, her frantic panic bleeding through the screen. When she finally realized I was not going to answer her texts, she did what she always does when she faces a minor inconvenience. She called for backup. She summoned the flying monkeys. At 9:30, my phone rang loudly. It was Aunt Margot. Aunt Margot is the undisputed gossip queen of our family. She thrives on drama and has always been my mother's fiercest ally in spoiling Fallon and making excuses for her terrible behavior. I let the phone ring 3 long times before I calmly hit the green answer button. Sloan, Aunt Margot's voice was incredibly sharp, using a tone normally reserved for scolding a very naughty, disobedient child. What on earth is going on over there? Your mother is beside herself with worry, and Fallon is having a full-blown panic attack in the living room. I stayed silent, letting her fill the empty space with her outrage. You locked her out of everything? Over a clumsy mistake at the pool? You are punishing your own sister over a piece of metal? Money has made you cold, Sloan. Family is more important than some computer file. You need to call the bank and turn her card back on right now. This is unacceptable behavior. A piece of metal. That is what they called my career. That is what they called the $50,000 project that paid my rent and put food on my table. Aunt Margot, I said, making sure my voice was dangerously calm and low. It is not her card. It is my card. And I am no longer funding her life. She is your sister. Margot shrieked through the speaker. She is trying to build a business. She needs support and love, not you locking her out in the cold. If her business is so successful and she is such a visionary, she can pay for her own Uber, I replied firmly. Do not call me about this again. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked Aunt Margot's number. My phone instantly buzzed again. This time it was my father. I watched his name flash on the screen. Vernon. The man who always told me to keep the peace. The man who made me empty my small savings to pay for my own car repairs when his golden child wrecked it. I swiped the red icon and sent him straight to voicemail. If you are enjoying watching this toxic family dynamic unravel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You will not believe what I found next when I started digging into her fake business. The morning text drama was just the appetizer. The real, heavy lifting was about to begin. I had successfully cut off her cash flow and her daily conveniences, but I still desperately needed to understand exactly why she smashed that drive. Yes, she was angry that I said no to giving her $45,000. But the way she destroyed it, so deliberately, so precisely against the granite, felt like a lot more than just a random temper tantrum. It felt incredibly calculated. I took my secondary laptop to my dining table, poured another cup of coffee, opened a fresh document, and started doing a deep, forensic dive into Fallon's digital footprint. I started with her LinkedIn profile. Fallon loved to project the pristine image of a young, hungry, successful female founder to her followers. Her bio title read, CEO and visionary founder of Technova Solutions. Technova Solutions. I rolled my eyes hard enough to see my own brain. It sounded exactly like a fake company name generated by a cheap artificial intelligence program. I scrolled slowly through her recent posts. It was the usual garbage. Lots of stolen, inspirational quotes, heavily filtered photos of her holding overpriced coffee cups in front of leased office buildings she did not work in, and long, rambling paragraphs about the daily grind and hustle culture. But as I kept scrolling back, I found a post from exactly 2 weeks ago that made my heart physically stop beating for a second. It was a picture of a presentation slide displayed on a large monitor. The caption read, "Sneak peek at the brilliant back-end architecture for our revolutionary new SaaS platform. Big things coming. Stay tuned." I clicked on the image and zoomed in as much as the resolution would allow. The specific code on the screen was slightly blurry, but the unique structural diagram in the bottom corner was unmistakable. It was my architecture. It was the exact, proprietary security framework I had meticulously designed for my client. The one that was stored securely on the smashed $50,000 drive currently sitting dead in my kitchen. My hands started to shake over the keyboard. Not out of fear, but out of pure, volcanic fury. She did not smash the drive because she was mad about the money. She smashed it because she desperately needed to delay my project timeline. She knew I would have to spend weeks rebuilding the encrypted data, which would give her a massive window of time to secretly shop my architecture around to investors as her own brilliant idea without me finding out and launching it first. I needed more proof. I needed the full, undeniable picture. I remembered she had a link to her company website in her social media bio. I clicked it. It was a poorly designed landing page full of stock photos, but at the very bottom, there was a small section for prospective investors to download her pitch deck. I quickly entered a fake email address and downloaded the PDF file to my desktop. I opened the document and started reading through it. It was full of meaningless tech buzzwords and empty financial promises. But when I reached slide 12, the breath was completely knocked out of my lungs. The slide was titled, "Our Leadership Team." There was a glossy, professionally shot photo of Fallon looking serious and visionary. Right next to her was a photo of me. My name, Sloan, was listed in bold, black letters. My official job title on her slide read, co-founder and lead architect. Underneath my profile picture, there was a long paragraph detailing my actual resume, my past corporate clients, and my industry awards. She was literally using my hard-earned reputation, my years of hard work, and my professional credibility to legitimize her fake startup to people with deep pockets. But it got worse. Much worse. On the final slide, asking for a massive seed round of $250,000, there was a formal letter of commitment. And at the bottom of that formal letter, right next to Fallon's signature, was mine. She had forged my signature. I sat back in my chair, staring blindly at the glowing screen until my vision blurred. The confusing puzzle pieces violently snapped together in my mind. She asked me for $45,000 at the barbecue to cover her immediate tracks, probably to pay off some initial debts or fake marketing expenses. When I said no, she smashed the drive to buy herself the time she needed to secure the big $250,000 investment using my stolen identity. This was no longer just a story of sibling rivalry. This was a federal crime. The air in my apartment felt thin and hard to breathe. I needed to move very carefully. One wrong step, one emotional outburst on social media, or one angry text message, and I could jeopardize my entire position. I needed a professional. I needed a shark who understood the law. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Corbin. Corbin was an old friend from my college days who went on to become a ruthless, highly successful corporate attorney. We used to study in the library together late at night, surviving on cheap vending machine snacks. Now, he charged $500 an hour to dismantle fraudulent companies and protect corporate assets. He answered on the second ring. "Sloan, it has been a minute. What is going on in the tech world?" "Corbin," I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the chaos in my head. "I need a massive legal favor. And I need to know right now if I have solid grounds for a major lawsuit." "Talk to me," he said, his tone instantly shifting from friendly college buddy to strictly business. I laid it all out for him. The intentionally smashed $50,000 drive. The stolen $12,000 over 3 years. And finally, the fake pitch deck with my forged signature and stolen intellectual property. I could hear him typing furiously on his keyboard in the background as I spoke. "Sloan," he finally said, letting out a low, impressed whistle. "Your sister did not just cross a legal line. She sprinted past it holding a flaming torch. What you are describing is federal wire fraud, identity theft, and malicious destruction of private property. If we take this straight to the police, she is looking at real, hard jail time." "I do not want to go to the police yet," I told him firmly. "If I involve the cops right now, my family will immediately close ranks. They will hire her an expensive defense lawyer, claim I am mentally unstable and acting out of jealousy, and drag this mess out in court for years. I want to destroy her reputation where it actually matters to her. In the business world. I want to cut the head off the snake. I like the way you think, Corbin chuckled darkly through the speaker. Send me everything you have. The bank statements, the pitch deck, the threatening texts. Put it all in a secure folder and send me the access link. I am already building it, I said. I call it the binder. I hung up and spent the next 4 hours obsessively organizing the digital binder. I categorized everything strictly by date, cross-referencing the stolen money from my accounts with her social media posts showing off her new luxury purchases on those exact days. I highlighted the forged signature in the pitch deck and attached a certified, notarized copy of my real signature for easy comparison. It was a masterpiece of forensic destruction. Just as I was dragging the final PDF document into the secure folder, a new notification popped up in the corner of my screen. It was an incoming email in my professional work inbox. The sender name caught my eye instantly, Mr. Harrison. I knew that name very well. Mr. Harrison was a senior partner at a very prominent, powerful venture capital firm on the West Coast. He was well known in the industry for being a hard-nosed, old-school investor who did not tolerate nonsense or scammers. I clicked open the email. Dear Sloan, I hope this email finds you well. Your sister, Fallon, recently submitted a pitch deck to our firm requesting a $250,000 seed round for Technova Solutions. We are highly intrigued by the back-end architecture you have allegedly designed. However, standard due diligence requires me to verify your involvement personally, especially regarding the signature on the commitment letter. Please call my office at your earliest convenience to confirm your status as co-founder. Best regards, Arthur Harrison. I stared at the screen, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across my face. Fallon had aimed for the stars, but she had accidentally aimed a loaded weapon directly at her own head. Mr. Harrison was not some gullible amateur she could easily trick. He was a professional shark, and he had just handed me the match to light the dynamite. I forwarded the email directly to Corbin with a single line of text. The target just painted a massive bullseye on her own back. If you are loving this story and want to see how I tear down her fake empire piece by piece, please drop a comment below saying, I'm win. That is our secret code for everyone who made it this far, and I will be hearting and replying to every single comment with that keyword. Stay tuned, because the trap is set and it is about to snap shut. The morning after my conversation with Corbin, the air in my apartment felt different. It was no longer thick with panic or suffocating with anger. It felt crisp, clear, and sharply focused. I was no longer a victim reacting to the chaotic whims of a toxic family dynamic. I was a professional orchestrating a meticulously planned demolition. I made a fresh pot of coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened a secure video conference link with Corbin. He was sitting in his high-rise corner office downtown, wearing a crisp navy suit, looking every bit the legal shark I needed him to be. Good morning, Sloan, he said, sipping from a sleek ceramic mug. I reviewed the entire digital folder you sent me last night. The binder is, quite frankly, a masterpiece of documentation. You have perfectly tied her unauthorized spending to the exact dates of her luxury purchases. The forged signature on the pitch deck is the nail in the coffin. So, what is our immediate next move? I asked, keeping my voice even. We strike hard, and we strike first, Corbin replied, leaning closer to his camera. I have drafted a formal cease and desist letter. But this is not your standard, polite warning to stop doing something. This is a legal shock and awe campaign. We are outlining the exact federal statutes she has violated. Wire fraud, identity theft, fraudulent misrepresentation, malicious destruction of property. We are officially demanding immediate restitution for the $50,000 destroyed drive, plus the repayment of the $12,450 she stole from your accounts. And if she ignores it? I asked. Corbin smiled, a sharp, predatory expression. The letter explicitly states that failure to comply within 48 hours will result in all evidence being immediately forwarded to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as local law enforcement, for criminal prosecution. I am sending it via certified overnight courier to your parents' address. But to ensure maximum impact, I am also emailing a digital copy to her, CCing your parents and CCing the other supposed board members she listed on her fake company website. Do it, I said without a single second of hesitation. I watched his finger tap the mouse. Sent, he confirmed. The physical copy will arrive at their doorstep by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Now, we wait for the shockwave. I did not have to wait until the next morning. The digital shockwave hit exactly 45 minutes later. My phone, which had been blissfully silent since I blocked Aunt Margot, suddenly erupted. It was not Fallon calling. It was my mother, Beatrice. I took a deep breath, mentally reinforcing the steel walls I had built around my emotions, and answered the call. Sloan, my mother shrieked. Her voice was so shrill and loud I had to pull the phone a few inches away from my ear. What is wrong with you? Fallon just ran downstairs screaming. We just got an email from a corporate law firm threatening to put her in federal prison. I stayed perfectly silent, letting her hysterical echo fade into the background. Are you listening to me? She cried, her breathing heavy and erratic. You hired a lawyer against your own sister? Over a stupid computer part and a few borrowed dollars? You are trying to ruin her life. You are trying to destroy our family. Cancel this immediately, Sloan. Mom, I said, keeping my voice as cold and hard as a glacier. She did not borrow a few dollars. She systematically stole over $12,000 from me over 3 years. And she did not just break a computer part. She maliciously destroyed $50,000 of my professional intellectual property and then used my name and forged my signature to fraudulently solicit $250,000 from a venture capital firm. She is just confused. My mother wailed, desperately clinging to her lifetime habit of enabling. She is trying to make something of herself and you are just jealous that she has big dreams. She is your sister, Sloan. You are supposed to protect her. Protecting someone from their own consequences is not love, Mom, I replied calmly. It is just preparing them for a much harder fall. I could hear Fallon wailing theatrically in the background, sobbing about how I was an evil, jealous monster who wanted to see her fail. You need to call this lawyer and tell him it was a misunderstanding, Beatrice demanded, her tone shifting from panic to an authoritative command. I am your mother, and I am telling you to fix this right now. We handle things in this family. We do not bring in outside lawyers. I felt a sudden, profound sense of exhaustion. Not the physical exhaustion of working long hours, but the deep, spiritual exhaustion of dealing with people who refuse to live in reality. I am not fixing anything, Mom, I said. I warned you all. I kept the peace for years. I paid the bills. I took the blame. I stayed quiet. But she crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. She made a business decision. Now she faces business consequences. Sloan, if you do not stop this, my mother started to threaten. I am hanging up now, I interrupted her. Do not call me again unless it is to discuss her payment plan for the restitution. I ended the call. I did not block her number yet. I wanted them to have the option to reach out when the reality of the situation finally broke through their delusions. I placed the phone gently on the desk. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. For the first time in 31 years, I felt completely, utterly free from their emotional blackmail. The legal warning shot had been fired into my family's living room, but that was only half the battle. Fallon had arrogantly stepped into my professional arena, and I needed to make sure she was thrown out of it permanently. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I put on a sharp, tailored black blazer over a crisp white blouse. I adjusted the lighting in my home office to ensure I looked polished, professional, and entirely in control. I clicked the secure video conference link provided in Mr. Harrison's email. The screen flickered, and Arthur Harrison appeared. He was an older man with silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and an aura of intense authority. He was sitting in a minimalist, glass-walled office overlooking the San Francisco skyline. Miss Sloan, he greeted me, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone. Thank you for making time on such short notice. I take due diligence very seriously at this firm, and when I saw a technical architect of your caliber attached to a seed round run by someone with absolutely zero technical background, I needed to have a conversation. Thank you for reaching out, Mr. Harrison, I replied smoothly. I appreciate your thoroughness. I believe this conversation will clarify a great deal for both of us. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Let us get straight to the point. Your sister, Fallon, presented a highly sophisticated encryption architecture. However, during our preliminary phone call, she could not explain the basic foundational logic of the code. She deferred entirely to you, claiming you were the silent genius behind the scenes. Did you design the architecture presented in the Technova Solutions pitch deck? Yes, I did, I answered without hesitation. Excellent, he nodded. So you are confirming your partnership in this venture and verifying your signature on the commitment documents? No, sir, I said, maintaining absolute eye contact with the camera. I am confirming that I designed that specific architecture for a completely different corporate client of mine. I am also confirming that I have absolutely zero involvement with Technova Solutions. I have never agreed to be a co-founder, and the signature on your commitment document is a complete forgery. Mr. Harrison froze. The faint, polite business smile vanished from his face entirely, replaced by a look of sheer, cold fury. He was a man who moved millions of dollars a day. He did not take kindly to being treated like a fool by a 27-year-old amateur. Are you telling me that this young woman attempted to solicit $250,000 from my firm using stolen intellectual property and fraudulent documents? He asked, his voice dropping an octave. That is exactly what I am telling you, I said. I have already retained legal counsel. A formal cease and desist has been issued this morning regarding the theft of this data. If you need me to screen share the original timestamped code repositories to prove my ownership, I am more than happy to do so right now. That will not be necessary, he said sharply. Your reputation precedes you in this industry, Sloan. I know your previous work. That is the only reason I even opened her pitch deck in the first place. He looked away from the camera for a moment, typing something quickly on his keyboard. The irony of the situation is staggering, he muttered. She tried to sell me a revolutionary data security platform using a foundation of blatant identity theft and fraud. It is insulting to my intelligence. I understand completely, I said. I apologize that my family drama briefly intersected with your firm. I am handling the situation aggressively on my end. Do not apologize for someone else's criminal behavior, Sloan, Mr. Harrison said, his eyes snapping back to mine. You have done me a massive favor today. I was a day away from authorizing a technical audit that would have wasted thousands of dollars of my firm's time. I will be personally ensuring that Fallon's name, and the name Technova Solutions, is permanently blacklisted across every major venture capital network on the West Coast. She will never secure a single dime of funding in this industry. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That is all I could ask for. He paused, studying my face carefully through the screen. His expression softened slightly, shifting from angry investor back to a calculating businessman. You know, Sloan, he started slowly. My firm is currently restructuring the back-end security for 3 of our newly acquired fintech startups. They're a mess. They need an architect who actually knows what they are doing, someone who operates with extreme integrity and precision. Someone exactly like you. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by the pivot. I am listening, I said. I want to bypass the usual agency channels, he continued. I want to offer you a direct contract to consult for my firm. We can discuss the exact numbers later this week, but I assure you, it will be significantly more lucrative than whatever your current client is paying you. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I would be very interested in reviewing that proposal, Mr. Harrison. We ended the call on excellent terms. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. Fallon had tried to use my name to build a fake empire and secure her future. Instead, she had accidentally handed me the most lucrative networking opportunity of my entire career, while simultaneously guaranteeing her own permanent exile from the business world. The universe really does have a brilliant sense of irony. The digital and professional destruction of Fallon was proceeding flawlessly, but I knew my family. They were masters of denial. An email from a lawyer could be deleted. A hysterical phone call from my mother could be rationalized as a misunderstanding. If I wanted to truly shatter the toxic cycle, I needed to present them with something physical. Something they could not swipe away or ignore. I went to a local print shop downtown. I brought a secure flash drive containing everything from the binder. I stood at the high-speed industrial printer and watched as page after page of undeniable truth slid into the output tray. I printed the highlighted bank statements detailing the $12,000 she had stolen. I printed the timestamped IP logs showing the purchases were made from their home internet network. I printed high-resolution screenshots of Fallon's social media posts, boasting about her new designer shoes on the exact same days the money was drained from my accounts. Then, I printed the Technova Solutions pitch deck. I printed the email from Mr. Harrison confirming her fraudulent attempt to secure funding. And finally, I printed a certified copy of the cease and desist letter drafted by Corbin. When it was all done, I had a stack of paper 2 inches thick. I bound it in a sleek, heavy black folder. It felt weighty in my hands. It felt like justice. I did not include a long, emotional letter. I did not write a tearful essay about how much they had hurt me over the years. I simply took a small, bright yellow sticky note and wrote 2 sentences in bold black marker. Your golden child just committed federal fraud. Handle it, or I will let the FBI do it. I stuck the note to the front cover of the black binder, slid the entire package into a heavy-duty shipping envelope, and paid for certified, overnight delivery requiring a direct signature from my father, Vernon. I intentionally addressed it to my father. My mother would have thrown it in the trash to protect her precious baby girl. But my father, despite his cowardice and his tendency to avoid conflict, was a man who deeply cared about his public image and his legal standing. He was a detail-oriented man when it came to his own safety. I knew that once he opened that package, he would read every single line. I dropped the package off at the courier counter at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, the waiting began. For the next 48 hours, my life became a ghost town. My phone did not ring. No text messages pinged on my screen. Even Aunt Margot's usually active Facebook page went completely, unnervingly silent. It was a strange, heavy kind of silence. It was the silence of a bomb falling through the air, right before it hits the ground. I spent those 2 days working on restoring the architecture for my current client. I ordered takeout, drank a lot of herbal tea, and watched the rain fall against my apartment windows. I felt a strange sense of peace. I was no longer trying to control their narrative. I had simply handed them the unvarnished truth, and whatever happened next was entirely on their shoulders. On the evening of the second day, I was sitting on my sofa reading a book when my phone screen suddenly lit up in the dim room. It was a text message. Not from Fallon. Not from my mother. It was from my father, Vernon. The message was incredibly short. Vernon, we received the documents. We will talk soon. I stared at the glowing white text on the dark screen. There was no anger in his message. There were no threats, no accusations of me overreacting, no demands for an apology. Just a cold, factual acknowledgement of reality. I did not reply. I locked my phone and set it back on the coffee table. The iron dome of denial in my family's house had finally cracked. The explosion was coming, and for the first time in my life, I was sitting at a safe distance, completely immune to the blast radius. The silence broke on a Tuesday morning. The explosion did not come directly from my parents. It came through the family's designated broadcaster. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Aunt Margot. Just a few days ago, she had been screaming at me, calling me cold and materialistic. This time, when I answered, her voice was completely different. It was hushed, frantic, and dripping with shock. "Sloan?" she whispered, as if she were hiding in a closet transmitting state secrets. "Are you there?" "I am here, Margot," I said, leaning back in my office chair. "Things at your parents' house are an absolute disaster," she breathed heavily into the microphone. "It is a complete nightmare." "Tell me," I said simply. According to Margot, the delivery courier had arrived right in the middle of dinner the previous night. My father had signed for the heavy package, opened it at the dining table, and started reading. As he flipped through the thick stack of bank statements and legal threats, all the color completely drained from his face. He turned ashen, as white as a sheet of paper. He did not yell immediately. He just kept reading, line by line, page by page. The silence in the dining room grew terrifying. My mother asked him what was wrong, but he ignored her. Finally, he slammed the heavy black binder down onto the table, causing the plates to rattle. He looked directly at Fallon, who was sitting across from him picking at her salad. He interrogated her like a hostile witness, Margot whispered. He asked her to explain the $12,000. He asked her to explain the forged signature. He asked her why a corporate law firm was threatening to call the FBI on his household. Fallon panicked. She immediately reverted to her usual, exhausted script. She started crying hysterically. She claimed it was all a big misunderstanding. She claimed I was twisting the facts to make her look bad because I was jealous of her youth and her big startup ideas. She looked at my mother, begging Beatrice to swoop in and save her like she always did. But this time, it did not work. Your mother just sat there, Margot told me, her voice trembling slightly. Beatrice saw the legal threat. She saw the word felony. She saw the bank statements. She could not beat song logic anymore. She just sat there with her lips pressed tightly together, looking at Fallon like she was a stranger. She was terrified of going to jail as an accomplice. When Fallon realized her mother was not going to protect her, she tried to run upstairs to her bedroom. My father stopped her. According to Margot, Vernon stood up, pointed a shaking finger at the front door, and delivered the final blow. He told her to pack her bags, Margot said. He said, no more handouts. No more covering for you. You have burned through every single chance you ever had, and you are putting my freedom at risk. Get out of my house tonight. By the next morning, Fallon was gone. She dragged 2 heavy suitcases and a duffel bag out to the driveway and called an Uber, one she actually had to pay for with her own remaining cash. She had absolutely no plan, no income, and nowhere permanent to go. Word traveled through the extended family network faster than a wildfire. The exact same aunts, uncles, and cousins who had eagerly called me cold, selfish, and petty in the group chat just days prior were suddenly completely silent. The family WhatsApp group went totally dead. It was almost hilarious. When I was painted as the irrational villain over a broken laptop, everyone had a loud opinion. But now that the undeniable truth was laid out in black and white legal ink, they could not type fast enough to stay out of the blast zone. But the collapse of Fallon's world did not stop at the edge of our family tree. Her social empire crumbled just as fast. After Mr. Harrison officially blackballed her, the news spread rapidly through the local tech and startup community. The friends who had been hyping her up, the mutual acquaintances who used to attend her lavish brunches paid for by my stolen money, suddenly vanished. Half of them stopped answering her frantic calls. The rest quietly unfollowed her on Instagram and LinkedIn, desperately trying to distance themselves from a known fraudster. One mutual friend eventually texted me to say that Fallon's entire fake business had evaporated overnight. No investors would take her calls. No partners would associate with her. She was currently couch surfing in a cramped apartment with a girl she used to mock for being poor. Her paper empire had completely burned to the ground. And all I had to do was hand them the matches. It has been 6 months since Fallon was kicked out of my parents' house with 2 suitcases and a shattered ego. The dust has finally settled, and the landscape of my life looks completely different. I haven't spoken a single word to my sister since the day she smashed my drive into the pool. We are strangers now, and I prefer it that way. My mother sends the occasional text message on holidays. They are short, remarkably polite, and entirely stripped of her usual emotional manipulation and guilt trips. My father's messages are even shorter. Just a simple, hope you are doing well, every few weeks. The endless, suffocating lectures about family loyalty and supporting my sister have completely stopped, replaced by a very quiet, very uneasy truce. They finally realize that the bridge is burned, and I am the one holding the only map to rebuild it. I am just not interested in doing so anytime soon. I did not set out to break my family apart. I simply set out to protect myself from being drained alive. And in doing so, I forced them to look at a truth they had spent decades trying to avoid. Protecting Fallon from the consequences of her own terrible actions was not love. It was a poison that enabled her to stay a perpetual, destructive child. As for my career, the destruction of that drive turned out to be the greatest catalyst for my success. There is one final secret I never told my family. The day Fallon smashed that $50,000 drive, I did not actually lose the project. I am an enterprise security architect. I am paranoid by profession. I had a fully encrypted, hidden cloud backup of the entire client architecture stored on a secure server in Switzerland. The smashed drive was an inconvenience that delayed me by exactly 1 week. But I let Fallon think she had destroyed me. I let her arrogance blind her. Because I knew that if she thought I was helpless and scrambling, she would get sloppy and make a fatal mistake. And she did. She walked right into Mr. Harrison's trap. Speaking of Mr. Harrison, he kept his word. A month after the fallout, his venture capital firm offered me an exclusive consulting contract to rebuild the security frameworks for their newly acquired startups. The contract was not for $50,000. It was for $350,000. With that contract secured, I finally moved out of my cramped apartment and bought a beautiful, sunlit penthouse overlooking the city skyline. I upgraded my entire workspace. I built steel walls around my life, both financially and emotionally, and nobody gets through those gates without earning my trust first. I still keep the binder in the bottom drawer of my new desk. I don't keep it because I plan to ever use it again. I keep it as a physical reminder. Boundaries are not built in one loud, dramatic screaming match. They are built through 100 quiet, incredibly difficult decisions to stop letting toxic people treat you like you owe them your sanity. Last week, I saw Fallon. I was walking out of a high-end coffee shop downtown after a client meeting when I spotted her across the street. She was sweeping the patio of a small, struggling cafe. She was wearing a faded, wrinkled apron over a plain t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and the heavy, expensive makeup she used to wear was gone. She wasn't staring at her phone, curating a fake life for the internet. She was just staring at the concrete sidewalk, her shoulders slumped, looking like she had been carrying a very heavy weight for way too long. For the first time in my entire life, I did not see that arrogant smirk on her face. I did not see the entitlement or the vicious challenge in her eyes. I just saw a profoundly exhausted, humbled person who had finally collided with the real world. She glanced up from her broom and saw me standing across the street in my tailored coat, holding my expensive coffee. She froze. We locked eyes for 3 long seconds. I didn't smile. I didn't glare. I didn't feel a sudden rush of triumphant joy. I just felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She looked away first, lowering her head, and went back to sweeping the dirt off the patio without saying a single word. I turned around and kept walking towards my car. I was not interested in revenge anymore. Justice had already been served perfectly. She had done it entirely to herself. Every single cut string, every burned bridge, every slammed door was her own doing. All I did was step out of the way and stop protecting her from the avalanche she started. Sometimes I wonder if Fallon ever truly thinks about what she lost, or if she still blames me in the quiet moments of her new life. But then I quickly remind myself that it is no longer my job to wonder. Because in the end, the most powerful, devastating revenge in the world wasn't destroying her. It was simply walking away, living my best life, and letting her destroy herself. And I did it completely calmly, completely silently, without ever having to raise my voice. Thanksgiving is coming up in a few weeks, and my parents have started calling again, begging me to come to dinner and let bygones be bygones. They say the family feels broken without me. Am I wrong for continuing to ignore their calls and planning to spend the holidays on a beach in Hawaii instead? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma being served ice cold, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. See you in the next one.